Great, thank you, Mair. Prynawn da, croeso cyrwydd heddiw. David, I'm not sure if I pronounced that completely correct, but it was my first attempt. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Transformation, Commercialisation and Corporate Centre Committee on Tuesday the 28th of June. Just to make you aware, the meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The sound and images recorded may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Okay, we'll move on to the main agenda for tonight. Apologies for absence. Mair?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Kevin Gibbs and from Mr Gethin Williams, our co-opted member.
That's great, thanks, Mair. Shall we admit Claire Payne, Mair?
Admitting now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, have we got any declarations of interest? Members are just reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal prejudicial interest. Have we got any declarations this evening? Well, this afternoon, I should say. I'm moving on to this evening already. It's been a long day. Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item 3, which is the work programme, it's a scrutiny work programme for 2022-2023. If you're on other committees and you've had it already, some of you will be aware that it's quite similar, starting across the board. So I'll move straight over to Andrew Mogford, who will take you through the report. And if you've got any questions, please comment and comments as well. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm going to pass over to Neil in a second to go through the detail, but just to recap and go through what we've done in other committees, just to say that the main purpose of the report is to agree what's on the agenda for this evening, but to agree then some of those principles as a committee that we work together as a committee through workshops between now and September to make sure we have a robust fit-for-purpose work programme that includes views of the public, views of the Cabinet and those things that we deem necessary to take forward in the work programme as a councillor-led process, where we can then look from September onwards, delivering that scrutiny through the work programme. But I'm going to pass over to Neil now, who's going to go through the more detail of the report, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew. It's just to go a little bit further on than to what Andrew said. It's just the purpose of the report is that we need to agree the items in Appendix 1 in the report as a committee, as this is the first part of the cycle. And in addition to this, identifying the key principles that we need to use to develop our work programme and bring back to this meeting in September. The key principles that we've used previously, but we've written them in a different way as part of the training, where we've touched on the 4 S's and the 4 R's. But it'd be the 4 R's that we'd be using as a focus for the work programme itself. But the chair will be holding workshops as a committee then, where we'll be drafting the work programme going forward. And as we mentioned earlier, then bringing back in September then to discuss further.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, okay. Have we got any questions or comments from anybody? No? Okay. It's Councillor Mitten, sorry.
Sorry, Brent, we went up a little bit late. No, I think that I just wanted to collectively give some feedback as far as the scrutiny process is concerned and our objectives moving forward. I had my full skip scrutiny recently, and I think, you know, it's keeping up and maintaining this momentum of the pre-meets and then really looking at the forward work plans as well, so that we can all become really effective and challenging within the scrutinies that we represent, and then obviously bringing it to this collective one as well as governance. So I just wanted to obviously recognise that with what the officers had done. And I know from my co-opted members as well, they were really grateful of the handbook, because we had lots of discussions around acronyms and things like that as well. So yeah, they were really grateful for that. And I think it's just set us off on good footing really for the future, and hopefully keep that up then as well. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Lisa. Lee Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just going forward, if we can have the pre-meets in our diaries as well as the as our scrutiny meeting, so I can plan it out. Yeah, for the year would be good. Also, I know I've spoken to Andrew previously about building in co-production into the scrutiny going forward. That's key for me. So that's all I need to say. Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Councillor David Jones.
Chair, I think Neil wants to come in on Lee's comment, so I'd leave.
Neil?
Sorry, I think Neil wants to come in on Lee's comment, so let him come in first.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jones. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just quick reply to Lee's point. Yeah, obviously moving forward, we will be working with the chairs and the committees, obviously getting obviously much more notice for the pre-meets and everything in place. So it's not sort of as squeezed in as it has been the last couple of weeks then.
Thanks, Neil. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to support what Lisa said about the pre-meets. I was educated big time yesterday, and I think that the pre-meets are now more important than ever because of the way we're performing scrutiny. And I would encourage chairs to encourage their committees to attend the pre-meets if possible, where you can iron out some of the wrinkles before you actually get to the actual meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on the comments made, really, and going back to Lee's point around co-production, that's some of the key work that we do, particularly through the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and perhaps that's something we can look forward to in our work programmes when we develop them across all our work programmes, really, seeing where we can look at taking those best practice examples from co-production, and if possibly, Lee, would you be able to give an update? I think it's on item 6, provided you are happy, Chair, on the work that's been done within that particular scrutiny committee regarding co-production, that perhaps we can take out to all other committees, provided we're happy.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Lee, you happy to give a summary on that?
Yeah, no problem.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, is anybody else indicating they'd like to speak or comment? Okay, while Councillor Hughes is on there, was one of the cabinet members. Councillor Hughes, could I just make a quick plea to yourself to take back to the cabinet that if we can get the cabinet forward work plan as soon as possible, that would be great, because that's something we can look at in terms of our forward work plans as well, if there's things on there which we need to bring in and implement as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, will do, Brett. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Okay, so just to cover over, the recommendations set out on page 5 is 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. The scrutiny members consider Appendix 3 and use this and plan the forward work programme. Scrutiny members agree the forward work programme to be developed and brought to the next scrutiny committee meeting, and scrutiny members agree items in the forward work programme up to the summer recess. Okay, nobody else has indicated that they want to speak or comment. Can I take that to the vote, please? All those in favour, please show now. Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks very much.
carried, Chair.
Thanks, Mair. Okay, could you lower your hands, please? And we'll move on then to the next item on the report tonight, which is section number 5, which is the Living Well thematic report and delivery of the key objectives in the corporate plan. We've got Lisa here today. Lisa, I think you've got members of your team here as well, haven't you? So I'll pass that over to you to run through the report, if you can, please, or pass it out to the members of your team as you see fit.
Okay, if I run through the report then initially, and then if there's any questions that any of us can answer, we'll answer those at the end, if that's okay. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, so the report is to consider the Living Well wellbeing objectives that were set out in the corporate plan. So for social services, that was people are empowered to live independently within their communities where they're safe and enjoy good physical and mental health. I suppose I should at this point give an apology because the report was initially written in December 2021, but due to elections, it's sort of been some delay in coming to you for scrutiny. So just apologies for that. I'm hoping everybody's had the opportunity to read the report, so I won't go through it in great detail, but just highlight some bits in there. So section 3 of the report outlines the legislative context and the strategic context. Section 4 outlines where we were. So our initial statement of wellbeing was published on 22nd of March 2017 and was revised in publication on the 28th of June. So it was a 5-year plan. Section 5 outlines where we are now. Very much the context of that was that the last 2 years we've been working very much in the pandemic, as everybody's aware of, and managing sort of services to adults and children. What I did want to point out is that obviously during the pandemic, the duties to safeguard individuals didn't change. So that was very much a priority and something we were working very sort of like busy on doing sort of that and making sure that people were safeguarded. You'll see details in section 5 with regards to the areas we've made improvements in, despite the challenges we've faced over the past 2 years. And I think, you know, I want to take my hat off to staff who've demonstrated real resilience and an incredible commitment to support the local community during the last 2 years, well, and previous to that, but they've really stepped up and worked really, really hard. Safeguarding to vulnerable children and adults was obviously a priority for us. And that work hasn't changed at all. So we've still, you know, visited families face to face. There has been some change in the way we work with regards to remote working, but very much where there was safeguarding concerns, then people were still being seen face to face. We've made good progress in all areas of the plan, and we will endeavour to continue this good work moving forward. The part of now moving forward is obviously recovering from the pandemic and looking at the areas we've made improvements in and continuing that good work. It has assisted that we've had, you know, Welsh Government funding around recovery, so that's been a really positive sort of aspect of the work. In 5.26 of the report, you'll see in the self-evaluation for 21-22, as a management team, we evaluated ourselves as good. We felt that we'd made good progress on the plan, that we'd managed services well during COVID, and I suppose give ourselves a pat on the back. The overall judgment was adequate because over the last 4 years we'd sort of looked as a judgment of adequate, although the last one was good. So we felt sort of because the majority is adequate, then the overall judgment was adequate. Section 6 outlines where we want to be, and section 7 what we need to do next. That's detailed sort of now continuing through the recovery transformation plan and through the annual report, which is coming to scrutiny in September. So there's clear direction for our services and real focus on recovery. So the ask for us today to scrutiny members is that we ask that you discuss the content of the report and provide appropriate challenge on the report content and offer feedback to officers so we can consider how we, you know, give you information in the future. So I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Does any other members of the Lisa's team want to speak? Or are you just happy to take questions then? Okay, no, great. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for that. We'll move on then to questions. Councillor Louise Minette-Vaux had her hand up raised first. Louise.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions prepared, so I'll just plough through them if that's okay. I'll try and be quick. So the first question is in relation to page 24, 5.12. You've said that there's 2 key developments with different models of care being explored and additional resilience to the service to ensure that there's enhanced support. So can you explain in a bit more detail what the different models of care are and what's the proposal for the enhanced provision for support for staff?
Great, thanks, Councillor Minette. What I'll ask is Taryn that answers that because that's relation to children's services.
Thanks, Lisa. So in terms of the development of various models of care within children's services, what we find is that over the pandemic, there's been a real change in need within our young person's population. And as any good service needs to, we need to adapt to that need and change and reconfigure our services accordingly. We're currently looking at potential residential development within Merthyr, so we're looking at models of care underneath their arm. What we are looking for that model of care to achieve is to support our children being placed closer to home, but equally to potentially use residential care at an earlier opportunity, so that children come into residential for a shorter period of time and can transition then back into their family home with a real robust therapeutic wraparound service supporting that transition. So that's one of the model of cares that we're exploring currently. And in addition to that, we know that there is a need for longer term residential placements for our children with more complex needs within the borough. What we find is, because a number of those children have to be placed outside of Merthyr, they have a number of changes at the same time. So not only are they changing their home, they're also changing their health representatives that they meet with to support them, and they're changing their education provision. So we're looking at by bringing them closer to support those transition points and enhance the level of coordination that we have for those individuals.
Thank you.
Louise?
And there was the second part in relation to the proposal for the enhanced provision for support for staff, please.
So underneath the children's services arm, we have something that's called Passion for Practice. What Passion for Practice is, that is our staff-led model of care. So what we look at is, whilst we have strategic managers in the service, respectfully, we all know they're knocking people's door every day, and we don't understand the barriers of everyday practice in the same way that we may have when we were case carrying social workers. So what we want to do is take a very practical support to listening to our staff and them telling us what are the barriers to practice for them, what they think can reduce the level of paperwork that they need to do so that they can spend more time doing intervention with families. For us, that's had some real quick wins and some longer term stability for us. So what we've found underneath that commitment is that we've increased the level of retention for staff in the service. Staff are reporting that they feel more valued and part of changes, and that they have more ownership about the service in which they work in. Underneath that, we've done various different things. So we've reduced the level of paperwork staff do. So we've looked at where paperwork is duplication, about how we maybe merge some of our assessments or other things so that they're only having to do that piece of information and narrative once. We've also looked at staff having SIM-enabled laptops, which has meant between visits there's less downtime and is supporting them transitioning between visits. They can use their laptop as technology with families to do direct work with them. We've looked at the moment, we are developing a series of videos because we know that people learn in different ways, and when people have contact with children's services, well, we wish to be as helpful and supportive as possible. That can be a real stressor for families, and then we share with them quite significant amounts of information, and then we go, because our visit ends, what we want to do is leave them with fact sheets and also some narrative via a video that allows them to explain key processes in the service, one to suit their learning style, and secondly just to make sure that when we are not around they have a reference point. So I suppose that's just some of the developments, but I think it's important to bring those examples in to show how that actually is changing practice within the service that we run.
Sorry, Councillor Carter, can I add as well to that, that the Passion for Practice reached the finals of the Social Care Accolade Awards. I'm surprised Tara didn't mention that. And we've had a commendation for it because we were runners up for that practice with staff.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Taryn. Councillor Minette Vaux.
Okay, so the next question is in relation to page 26, 519. It's in relation to the key performance indicators, and you've said there were some ambitious targets initially and some were not met. But I found it a little bit unclear through the report what those KPI targets were, the ones that weren't met. And so if you could just clarify what they were and if they're included going forward.
Okay, so there's been some changes in the data that we collect because obviously there's going to be a change to the matrix moving forward. So we stopped gathering some of the data, which obviously caused confusion then over the 5 years because there's been different metrics that we're looking at. So there was a period of time during the pandemic that we didn't record any of the data because Welsh Government stepped down and said that we didn't need to respond to the metrics, and they were consulting on some of the new data. We have now started to gather the new information they want. So that data's gone in for the end of last year. So we've got that information that we can send through if councillors want that. And then obviously moving forward, we'll have the new data. So unfortunately, over the 5 years, there wasn't necessarily comparable data because we were collecting different information. So it was one of the sort of difficulties we've had, I guess, over the 5 years. There are certain key indicators with regards to, you know, placement information for children and adult information. So we pulled that information together. But so I'm conscious that that's probably an area we do need to improve moving forward.
Thanks, Lisa.
So-
Louise?
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Chair, can I just add to that from a data point of view, if that's okay, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine, Andrew.
Thank you. So yeah, as Lisa has alluded to there, we are on a journey of improvement with our data across the local authority, and we are looking to further develop our data and digital strategy to reflect the growing needs around data and the expectation, not just in social care, but across the whole of the local authority. And that comes in our RTI plan, again, as Lisa alluded to earlier. Part of the work that we are doing is around making sure that our data is more timely, so looking at quarterly reporting and more regular reporting. So Councillor Minette, folks, I just wanted to add that to what was said, that we are continuously trying to improve this area, and that is something we are looking forward to achieving across the board over the next year as part of our RTI plan.
Thanks, Andrew. Louise?
Brilliant, thank you. So my next question is in relation to the strategy on the page 48. I can see there's a new KPI added. It was in relation to a percentage of new assessments completed for children within statutory timescales. Can you just clarify, are those safeguarding assessments or different assessments, please?
So those assessments would include the assessments that come through the local authority's early help hub and through our multi-agency safeguarding hub. So anything that comes into children's services under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act we consider requires a proportionate assessment is considered as part of that stat.
So what is the time frame for that? Because I can see there's a KPI for safeguarding referrals for adults being assessed within 7 days. So is it like, what is that time frame?
So the maximum time frame for a proportionate assessment is 42 days, and that's a statutory requirement. However, we do have internal monitoring of how long cases sit within that assessment phase. So for example, within the early help hub, assessments don't sit in that provision for longer than 7 days because of the nature of those being briefer assessments. We expect them to be done in a more timely manner. Assessments that take up to 42 days may be your cases would sit within the intake and assessment team that are more complex, potentially your cases that are proceeding to a child protection conference would sit within that longer time frame.
Okay. So in relation to just so I'm clear, so if it's like a C1 referral came in, so is there like a time frame on that from when the C1 would come in to when somebody would complete the assessment or have a look at it? Is that like a KPI?
Yes, so when a referral is received by our multi-agency safeguarding team, they have to be screened within 24 hours. What I would say is that we have a clear desk policy, for lack of a better word, on that. So we don't do that within 24 hours, we do that within the same day. So there is no referral that is not seen by the time a practitioner leaves prior to it coming in at 5 o'clock into the service. And our compliance for that generally sits at 100%.
Brilliant.
And then following that decision being made, we may feel that we need more information to see whether we need to undertake an assessment, or we may make the decision that goes straight for assessment. But what we do have is monthly monitoring of all those decision making within the multi-agency safeguarding hub and the early help hub to make sure that the right level of scrutiny is given around decision making and to make sure that that's timely. And what I would say is that I've had no flags to say that there's been any concerns, and I regularly dip sample that myself.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'm almost done. I'm sorry. Is that okay, Chair? Am I okay to go on?
Yes, certainly, carry on, Louise.
Okay, so the next is in relation to page 52, and page 53 is in relation to the information about the refocused wellbeing objective, in relation to communities protect, enhance and promote environment and countryside. So Chair, this probably crosses over to the other report as well. So it's just, you know, obviously our local beauty spots, countrysides and wildlife habitats, playing fields. Obviously, we know they're important for promoting well-being. So obviously, you know, with the refocus wellbeing objective and what's that saying, you know, what are the plans to ensure that we are protecting those natural environments and ensuring that that wellbeing objective is always on the main, is like one of the main focus points, and you know, those spaces are protected for those future generations and not second place to any sort of economic growth. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Manette-Vokes. Andrew, did you want to come in on this one? You got your hand up.
Yeah, if I take the initial part of the question, and then feel free other officers or cabinet member to jump in. We had a discussion around this yesterday in the Scrutiny Committee about the importance of open spaces and biodiversity, and play areas across the county borough. So you are right, Councillor. There is a direct crossover with some of the other work that's being carried out. In addition to that, I think moving forward, I think this is going to become more common. I think as we mature as an organisation and our objectives become more resident or customer focused, that inevitably there's going to be work across our directorates and across our scrutiny committees that will aim to address and improve our outcomes for residents. So I think that was a point I wanted to make. But absolutely, I think there's a realisation across the local authority of our built environment and our natural environment to help residents in the working life, the living well, and the best start to life objectives actually. But yeah, I just want to reinforce that could well be common practice going forward, where we have we have our objectives which cross over a number of directorates and scrutiny committees.
Thanks, Andrew. Robert Barnett.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to come in on the open spaces. We do have our open spaces strategy, which consists of 11 action plans over the 11 wards. So we can share that with you. Obviously, that's been updated on a regular basis. We obviously appreciate the needs of the general public and the open spaces, and to that end, we have put in SPF funding for 2 additional wardens and also a community liaison officer, basically to raise the status of this subject with members and the public alike. So hopefully, if that funding comes into fruition, then we'll be in a better position for educating the public and updating our website, etc. It is an important issue, and I don't think we've gone far enough in dealing with the public open spaces at the moment. But it's something we're on that journey, and hopefully will improve in the short and long terms.
Thanks, Robert. Councillor Manette-Vokes.
Okay, thank you. It's the last one for me. So it's in relation to page 56, 3.3. So there was a report, but it wasn't published, but there was a letter that was received which outlined findings. So it was just to touch on those, really. I think you've answered a few in relation to the support for staff. But it's just to make sure, because obviously it highlights need to continue to review caseload numbers for social workers, need to show the planned improvements to assessments are effectively implemented alongside the planned improvements to the management and monitoring of assessments. Formal supervisions were not always taking place because of the volume of work. Need to continue the quality assurance work underway to achieve consistently good standards, and the provision of the active offer of Welsh was not always recorded on case files. So it's just to highlight, really, and just to ask, I know you've mentioned obviously about the passion for practice, but it's just just to make sure that these have been addressed as well, and what's in place to ensure that that we are addressing them. Thanks. And
Yeah.
that's my last question. Thank you.
We meet regularly with CIW, so both heads of service have regular meetings, and I meet with them on a 6-monthly basis. And if they need to see me more often, then they do contact us. We've got a really good relationship with our CIW inspector. So they hold us to account on any previous letters that we've had. So they want to know where we're at on the improvement journey. For us in the department, supervision is really important. That might happen virtually now as opposed to face-to-face, but where it's necessary, then staff have had that one-to-one face-to-face support, because that's been really important during the pandemic. The caseload is something that we monitor quite closely, and at the moment there's a safeguarding steering group set up where we look at that information across adults and children's services, you know, sort of comparing sort of caseloads across the area. It's difficult because you might think 15 is a good caseload, 20 could be a good caseload. It depends how many families are in that, and you know, and the complexity, because you might have 20 cases and they're all relatively straightforward and you're in the process of closing them. You could have 15 cases, they're all child protection, really complex, in which case that's quite a heavy caseload. So it's about that supervision and that, you know, sort of monitoring. I've got to say both Taryn and Angela are really on top of that within their services, because it's something that's been flagged in the past by CIW.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Louise. I'll move then to Councillor David Jones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question has been answered, though I did have a comment to add to it and turn it into a question. It's regarding Lisa's opening comments. Although this report may have been delayed because of the elections, could this be a positive thing, as it's now being dealt with by people who will be taking it forward?
Sorry, David, can you repeat that last bit, please?
Could this now be, although the report was delayed because of the elections, could this now be seen as a positive and being dealt with by the members who will be taking it forward?
Thanks, David. Andrew?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, David. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity now for us to build the, you know, to use this to build our work programs all across the local authority, but also just to remind everyone that we are reviewing our corporate plan this year, and there's an opportunity for everyone to be involved in that, but in particular to use these findings and use the data from all our reports, particularly the thematic reports that are presented here, and we would have had previously around best start to life and working life, that we use that data to add to the richness of our corporate plan going forward, and most importantly, we learn the lessons over the last 5 years and take into account the needs assessments which are being carried out across Cwmtaf Morgannwg, as well as these kind of reports, to make sure that we do strengthen our corporate plan going forward.
Thanks, Andrew. David?
No, thank you, Andrew. That's me done, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mitten?
Yeah, thank you. Just referring to 5.14, I think obviously, as somebody who supports a care leaver, as you know, I think the news today from Welsh Government for our staff certainly will help. I'm just looking forward to seeing how that actually works on paper as far as the financial support for care leavers, you know, helping them into that transition, I guess. I just really wanted to make an observation about that. And then secondly, I think it's 5.5. Sorry, my mod.gov has just gone down, so I've been trying to pick it back up. But I think it was around 5.5. And I think it's really important to note that whilst we have all the strategies, you know, and certainly the excellent work that the department has taken forward, we mustn't forget that, you know, talking to people in relation to adult social care and certainly dealing with young people and children's social care as well, more often than not are the most sensitive subjects that our officers will deal with within the council. And it notes there, you know, how we are now working post-pandemic. And it does note at the bottom of that paragraph that, you know, it is still important to recognise that we need to ensure that we maintain that face-to-face as much as possible. So I just wondered, Lise or where we were now in that picture of, you know, agile working, and whether there was more face-to-face contact with any service users or anybody that presents themselves to us.
I think from our point of view, we've always kept that face-to-face with people. Even in the sort of, you know, when we were in the initial lockdown, if people needed to go out face-to-face, they would. I appreciate they were wearing PPE, so there was, you know, still those restrictions and things. But I think we're back to, I say, normal, old or normal. We are doing visits, older people and children are being seen. There are still some virtual sort of meetings taking place with regards to, so for example, children's LAC reviews or conferences. Some of the information we've had is that families, certainly parents and children, cope better with those meetings being online because they feel more confident speaking in this sort of arena rather than being a room full of people. You know, they feel more comfortable with that. There are others not comfortable with it, so obviously we will change the way we work to suit them. But we would adapt in day to day, so you know, whatever's needed. So from a safeguarding point of view, we're not doing, you know, sort of visits. If the child's got an injury, we're going out to see the child. So that's really important. Similarly with adults. And if an assessment is needed, then we need to see face to face. Some of the long-term reviews for adults are being done sort of virtually. But again, that's about what people want. Some adults are more comfortable face-to-face visits because they're not used to technology, so we're adapting wherever, you know, we need to. So it's about having that dialogue first, I think.
Okay, thanks, Lise. And then, Chair, if I may, just one other follow-up, really. I mean, it's something that obviously I'd worked on in my previous role, but inevitably it's within the report as well, and that is something that is vitally important to the young people of Merthyr Tydfil, and that is trying to have a facility within the local authority. And if I may be as crude as saying, financially for us as well, which, you know, we do allude to, but also more importantly, that we try to retain them within their own local authority. So, you know, there's that sense of familiarity as well. I note that that is still work in progress, but when is that likely to come back to us? Just that perhaps, Chair, we can include that then in the forward work plan?
Okay, so are you talking about potentially a residential unit for young people?
Yeah, I think there's a feasibility study either done or due to commence, Lise, within the body of the report.
So the feasibility study has been completed. There are still some tweaks that need to be done on it about, you know, how potentially the unit will look and the sort of the architecture of it. We will bring that to cabinet discussion in the next, I would have thought, maybe 6 weeks, depending on recess. But we're probably looking post-September, really. There are capital meetings taking place on a regional basis to look at potential funding over a 5-year period, and one of the priorities for that is a safe accommodation for children with complex needs. So it's going to be a work in progress over the next 5 years, but there certainly will be something coming back to cabinet or council, I would have thought, within the next 6 months.
Thank you. Chair, that's it for me. I think it's just making a mental note that we can perhaps pick that up then in the forward work plan. Thanks, Lise.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Lisa. Has anybody else indicated they'd like to ask any questions? No. Okay, I've got just a couple of quick questions, if that's okay. Lisa, I appreciate we reflecting back on the services delivered and everything, but can you tell us what we've learned then, primarily through COVID, and what does this learning mean for the future and the delivery of our services?
Oh, can I have an easier one?
Sorry.
What have we learned? Okay. I think we've learned that we can adapt very quickly to change. That was one of the biggest learning sort of things for us. Staff stepped up. I think we've realised we've got a really strong staff group who have adapted to sort of those big changes. I think it's highlighted some of the areas we probably need to focus on. So, you know, capacity wise, we've put additional resources into adult safeguarding in the mental health services. So that's something that, you know, we'll continue to improve and move forward. I think the other thing is that we need to do services differently. So the traditional model. Sorry, I started barking, somebody knocked the door. So the traditional model, for example, of day services maybe is not what people want. That was one thing at the start of the pandemic. Day services was one of the areas that did close down because of, you know, social distancing and the risks. And a lot of people made the decision not to send their loved ones to day services because they were fearful of, you know, them catching sort of COVID. And I think we've realised that we can offer different services as a result, and whether that may be direct payments or people doing things within their own house, or you know, doing things as a group as opposed to going to a day services setting. The other thing was about offering different services for people with dementia. So, you know, we've got a really fantastic resource now for people with dementia at TNFIS, which was finalised during the pandemic, and you know, we haven't had an official launch yet because of restrictions, but that's really positive. So it's about looking at revamping some of those services.
Lisa, that's great. Thanks very much. It gives a flavour of everything. That's great. Last question for me, Lisa, and I'm not sure if it has an impact or not, but has the fuel crisis affected delivery in any way?
It hasn't to date, touch wood, she says. We've had one or two staff raise concerns that, so for example, dom care workers who were more likely to be out and about on a regular basis providing that day-to-day care. So that there's been some concern there. We are aware that Welsh Government are looking to support social care staff with electric vehicles, maybe lending electric vehicles so that, you know, we can have cheaper transport, and that's something we're exploring, but nobody's come forward yet to say they want to sort of take that forward as a pilot. Social workers continue to visit. I suppose the biggest issue for us is out to county visits. So we've got, you know, children in other parts of the country, but what's happening is we're sort of looking at leased vehicles at the moment for that. So that's sort of taking the cost, but it's probably something that's going to be raised, but it's not something that's being flagged at the minute.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Nobody else has indicated they want to speak or comment on this report. So the recommendations set out on page 20, which we've covered over. The content of the report be discussed by committee members, which we've done, and performance data carefully scrutinised. The scrutiny members provide appropriate challenge on the report content and offer feedback to officers, which I think everybody has. As we all know, this is a thematic report and it's presented every year to the Transformation Committee. The main purpose of this report is just to close the loop on last year's scrutiny cycle, which we've carried over. So thanks everyone for that. In terms of the length of the report, can I ask members, are they happy with the length of the report? Does it give too much detail, or could it be shorter? Or is that something which we need to consider going forward ourselves? Okay, please come back to me with your thoughts. If you can send me an email or correspondence, and obviously then we can feed it back, Lisa, if appropriate to do so. Okay, thanks for that. We'll move on then to agenda item 6, which is the environmental wellbeing thematic report, the delivery of key objectives in the corporate plan, focus on the future and wellbeing in the community. So as I just said, this is a thematic report and which has been presented to us, and this is another report which is to close off last year's scrutiny cycle. Judith is not here today, so in Judith's absence, the heads of services will be here. So can I pass it over to the first one who's been allocated to take us through the report, please?
I'd be taking the report there. Brent, thanks.
Thanks, David.
Okay. And then the officers will answer any questions.
Lovely. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks. As Brent have already said what the report is about. The summary report is found 1 to 1.3. The committee has requested a report be brought before them that reflects the overall service delivery across the lifetime of the Council's current corporate wellbeing plan and the impact against environmental well-being. Objectives set out in the plan: communities, project, enhance and promote the environmental and countryside. The report responds to members' request to outline progress made when delivering the environmental well-being objectives and contain relevant data and information to provide evidence to support outcomes claimed. The report will also include information on opportunities identified and action in relation to this objective, as well as including information on key challenges faced and how they've been managed. The report makes explicit links to other key corporate strategies and policies that have been used to deliver the services. It shows evidence of how progress towards a more integrated ways of working have developed over the lifetime of this plan, and it will clearly outline key lessons learned to provide the intelligence that can be used when developing the next iteration of the corporate wellbeing plan. We go to the recommendations. That the content of this report will be discussed by the committee members and performance data carefully scrutinized. And 2.2, scrutiny committee members provide appropriate challenge on the report content and offer feedback to officers, which can be fully considered and utilised when planning for the next iteration of the corporate wellbeing plan begins. And I hand it over then for questions.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. Can I open it up to members' questions, please? Councillor David Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The current and future recycling targets are mentioned several times in the report, and these are very important. Is the tonnage of trees cut down because of ash dieback epidemic counting towards our recycling rates, please?
Robert?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've been dealing with the ash dieback now for the last 2 years. I think in 2021 we had some 150 tonnes went through the recycling plant at Bryn, and in 2024 another 184 tonnes. So in total about 334 tonnes of ash dieback trees have gone through the Bryn recycling, which contributes to obviously our recycling figures. That doesn't include any of the work carried out by our in-house Arbo team. So it would be a little bit more than that. So it's around 350 tonnes, I'd say.
Thank you for that, Rob. And you've preempted my second question. Have we got an idea of what that works out as a percentage of our recycling figures?
That would probably go better to either Paul or Steve Thomas in the recycling sections.
Yeah, hi, Councillor. Yeah, the figures Rob has just given would be, it would count about 0.7, 0.8 up towards 1%, slightly under 1% towards our figures.
Right, and if I can stay on that theme then, please, Chair. From the figures I've seen, our recycling figures have only improved marginally over the past few years. There is limited time and volume that the ash dieback can contribute to our recycling figures. What are we looking at in the future to replace those figures?
Well, ultimately, Councillor, we need to be getting more recycling out of the wheel bin. We understand that there's more than enough recycling still contained within the wheel bin going to energy from waste to achieve the 70% in 24-25. So we recently appointed a behaviour change officer that will help us get those not participating to start participating and capture more from those who are already participating. So that's the sort of midterm goal up until 24-25, but we can't just rely on that. So we do need other things to try and replace some of this ash dieback. And one of the things we're looking at the moment is discussing the sort of pros and cons of opening the HWRCs up to take some trade recyclables in. Possibly starting with the income materials such as cans and plastics, and the cost neutral ones such as electronic items. Possibly with a view to extending that then, possibly chargeable, but it's being discussed at the moment. But should we be introducing that, then because it's bulky waste, then we should be able to offset that ash dieback.
That's great, Steve. Thank you very much. Am I allowed to carry on, Chair?
Of course, David, yes.
Under 5.4, page 65 in the report, we've established our electric vehicle transition plan. Have we addressed the large vehicle issue where the HGVs didn't have enough power to complete rounds? Have we addressed that now, please?
No, we haven't. Good afternoon, Councillor and Councillors. No, we haven't addressed that at the moment. We're still trialling different types of vehicles for different areas. Obviously, you know that the one we trialled going back just before the pandemic wouldn't get up to 0 and then broke down on the way back. We are in discussion with Welsh Government who are trying to get us a couple of trial runs with different RCVs. And obviously we'll come back to the committee and we'll try them out when we've trialled them. But at the moment we haven't got anything which is over 7.5 tonne, which we can trial for electric.
Marvellous, thank you, Paul, much appreciated. Then page 66, 510. These are all excellent steps taken by the Directorate to ensure service continuity. Now, as we are coming out of COVID, how are we progressing with going back to pre-COVID normality with face-to-face meetings, etc.?
Well, as you know, Merthyr Council is one of the only ones in Britain who delivered the full service throughout COVID. We've never stopped our face-to-face. Myself and John, being the only real officers in waste operations, have been out all straight through the pandemic, spoken to people, knocked people's doors. And as you know, all of waste management operatives have handled other people's waste during the COVID pandemic. So going back to anything, we haven't stopped doing anything.
Sorry, Paul, that question wasn't really to you. It was more open for other services that the Directorate provides.
Can anybody else answer that one? Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Jones, to echo what Paul is saying, we as frontline services have been in from day one. We've worked consistently throughout the COVID period. We don't have the, we are not office based, so we have to be out there with the members of the public. Parks kept open. Well, after the first 2 weeks, they were initially shut down, but they realised the importance of them for mental health, etc., during the COVID period. So they were quickly reopened. Our staff were also helping out waste services where there was shortfalls due to COVID, etc., and also in the cemeteries because of the rise in mortality. Park staff were helping out in the cemeteries. So our staff were constantly in work and doing face-to-face meetings with the public, etc. Obviously under social distancing rules and PP, etc. But we were there working consistently throughout the period.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rob. And last one, Chair, if I may. It's page 68 under the heading of contribution to wellbeing objectives, and this was broached on in the previous item. Around best start to life provision and upkeep of green spaces which can be used by children, young people and their families free of charge. Under living well provision and upkeep of green spaces which can be used by children, young people and their families free of charge. And during the pandemic, to use clean green open space to walk through and use to assist with mental health. Though I would add to that, no, it's not just for the duration of the pandemic. Is there a conflict between these objectives and the local development plan? Has consideration been given to the fact that land that is currently being used for recreation and leisure will be removed for housing and employment with no possible replacement in the local area?
Does any officer want to take an answer, a stab at that one? Answer.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, being the only planning officer here, I better answer that one, I suppose. The local development plan would have carried out the assessment of open spaces assessment during the recent new local development plan. Existing allocations would have taken into account those areas, and there are open spaces that are allocated or protected within the local development plan. Existing residential sites as well will also, through policies in the local development plan, look for public open spaces, often within the sites themselves. So it's all part of the planning process. But yeah, those open spaces would have been protected during the local plan process due to reports that were submitted and looked at during that process of public examination.
But is there a conflict though between the Wellbeing Acts and the LDP?
There shouldn't be any conflict between that, because the Wellbeing Act would have been taken into consideration during the planning policy processes as part of the local development plan, and will continue to be looked at when planning applications are submitted for sites within the county borough.
Fair enough. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Andrew, I'll bring you in quickly. Is it to cover over another point on this one?
Yes, it is, Chair. Just to add very briefly that also our decisions we make as a cabinet and a council, we consider our integrated impact assessment, which looks against our 5 ways of working, the Wellbeing Act, as well as biodiversity and everything else. So when we make decisions as a local authority, we use that impact assessment to gauge to what extent it's having an effect on all of those things before making that decision, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Lee, before I bring you in, I just wanted to go back quickly to Councillor Jones's second question, and this is aimed at Karen and Hugh. I appreciate your hands were raised, which I did see, but it appeared Robert Barnett answered David's question. However, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, from me, it's just to say that within engineering, we have got staff returning to the office now 1 day a week. We are having face-to-face meetings with contractors. So yeah, we're trying to go back to normality as much as possible.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Hugh, was there anything you wanted to add, or are you happy to progress?
No, just to reiterate, the planning department worked all the way through the pandemic. We were in the office during the pandemic. Obviously, planning applications, you need to go out on site to have a look at the sites as well. So very much the same with social services. Really, we through PPE we visited sites as best as you can visit them from outside the site, but sometimes you have to go inside properties as well. So we did that with discussions with the owners and using the relevant PPE. So yeah, we worked all the way through as well.
Thanks, Hugh. Councillor Lee Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. Yeah, page 63, item 3.4. says the Neighbourhood Services Directorate works collaboratively with both external partners such as MVH. Could you just tell me what you're doing with MVH and what are you doing to help the residents get their recycling out of their bins? Because at the moment, it doesn't seem like many are recycling.
Thanks, Lee.
Yes, Councillor Davis. We're working with all landlords at the moment, both private and social landlords. I think the key area for us at the moment, working with MVH, is we're working in partnership on community days. So jointly we organise these community days set up in various locations throughout the borough. We tend to do 2 a month, where it's a bit of an amnesty for residents. So any bulky items they've got, especially residents that aren't able to take them to the HMRCs, we'll collect them, take them to the HMRCs ourselves, take them to the reuse shop. It's also in partnership with other departments in the authorities, such as street cleansing, grounds maintenance, fly tipping teams. We're currently looking at an issue they have with void properties. So there are a couple of meetings planned for the forthcoming weeks. So we'll have a chat with them and see if we can sort of collaborate on that side of things. So, but that's what was meant by that in the report.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't really have said there's many people recycling within, say, Gurness, but there's a number of gardens with piled up rubbish and recycling, and it's quite evident. You only got to walk around, you can see it, and it, you know, I'd probably say 50% of those bags are going to be recycling, and then they are going to be fly tipped somewhere. Maybe walkarounds in communities would be really worth it, and maybe we can do site visits ourselves as a scrutiny panel as well.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. We've done this sort of thing in the past as well. I think it's ongoing. The issues on some of the estates in terms of participating in our sort of recycling services is, well, it's quite poor, to be honest with you. And as I mentioned earlier, the behaviour change officer, I don't want to dump too much on this person before they start, but there will be a big onus on that role to engage with community groups, residents, and the key priority really is getting them to sort of take part in our curbside services at a much better level, and obviously sustaining that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Lee, is that the last of your questions? Great, thanks. We're going to move now on to one of our co-opty members, Claire Payne.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that I'm aware of on the sort of grounds of recycling and the wheelie bins are that letters were issued where there were any recyclables found in wheelie bins. There was kind of advance notice, if you like, of potential financial penalties if that behaviour continued. Have those fines been issued? If so, how many? And will the current cost of living increases and financial pressures on residents of the borough have any impact on the approach the local authority takes?
Hi, yes. Well, we've been fining residents of the borough since 2011 for producing excess waste. In 2019, in partnership with the Waste Resources Action Programme, RAP Cymru, a Welsh Government organisation, we adopted the Keeping Up the Joneses campaign, as it's called, and basically that focuses on recyclables within the wheel bin, as opposed to producing excess waste. So now we're enforcing on both those projects, under Section 46 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990. Since it started in 2019, we stopped doing that through the early part of COVID, between March 20 and September 20. Continued it then from 20 to date. Yes, we've issued numerous fines up in the 20 to 30 sort of mark, and some of those fines that weren't sort of paid, the resident was taken to court for prosecution, and we have had about half a dozen successful prosecutions under this. It's not something we like doing, to be honest with you. It's not a money-making project. Our initial engagement is education. We visit these properties that don't comply with our requirements. Numerous times we contact them by phone, by sort of knocking the door. Anything we can do really just to get them to sort of take part in the services properly, and really the financial penalty is the final straw, really. That's phase 3 of the project. The first 2 phases being educational engagement.
Great, thank you. Can I just ask one final question, please?
Of course.
On Appendix C, on page 82, the very bottom line there, it talks about the number of open priority spaces. And what I noticed since 2019-20 is they're not hitting target, but yet the number in the target has increased. Is this because the number of areas has increased, or is it just the willingness to improve?
Does somebody want to come in and answer that question for Claire? Robert?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that last part of that question. What was the last part? Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, on the sort of bottom line, I can see, and it's going up to every year, but since 2019-20, there's been a failure to hit the target, yet the number has still continued to rise by 2 each year. And I was just wondering, is that because the number of priority open spaces has increased, or is this more a drive from the local authority to sort of set sort of perhaps higher standards for workforce?
Yes, both really. Obviously, no work was carried out on the priority open spaces during the COVID period, so there was a bit of a lag in the reaction time. Also, you are right, there as we are closely looking at more open spaces, then the number of open spaces increases. There are, as I said previously, there are 11 action plans in our open spaces strategy, and all of those sites will form part of that strategy. So if we are successful in the SPF grant with the 2 extra wardens and a liaison officer, we are hoping that we can make significant changes in the key performance indicators in that area and try and get some of the open spaces strategy, back on target.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Claire, does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert. Councillor Minette-Vaux.
Hiya. It was just a follow-on question, really, in regards to the education in relation to waste management from properties, really. Because I know it's been mentioned that there's been some work with Merthyr Valley Homes, but I was just curious if there's been any work done with private landlords in the area, because they should all be registered, so there should be that information available, targeting those possibly high turnaround properties as well, providing information packs for those private landlords to go in with new tenancy agreements. Thanks.
Hi, Councillor. Yes, there has. I don't want to use COVID as an excuse, but we developed some packs just prior to COVID hitting that were designed to sort of, as you say, to help these high turnaround residents when they moved in become aware of our services. We haven't got them out to them yet. We've done some other work with some of these landlords. For instance, we've put what we call recycling frames into some of the sort of properties that haven't got sort of frontages or whatever, where they can put these sort of recyclables out on the front or whatever. So we've designed frames that we put in sort of bin rooms and things like that. So there's been a bit of work going on, but obviously now we're seeing probably the tail end of COVID. It's definitely something that we'll pick up on. And again, our behaviour change officer will be heavily involved in that alongside our recycling officer and waste and recycling wardens.
Thanks, Stephen. Louise?
Thank you. Okay? That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Okay, great. I've just got a couple of quick questions. The first question, I just want to ask the same questions which I asked Lisa in the first round, was in terms of the fuel crisis, has this affected service delivery already, or is it going to be affecting it going forward?
Not well. Afternoon, Councillor. Not so much the price on the fuel. The problem we're having now is that because the HGVs have to fill up every night, because that's the only amount they hold, we're finding that when we go to Snows or where we use Valley Heights, if there's no diesel there, it's costing us in other ways, because we've got to either work overtime then to wait for the diesel to arrive, or we've got to get somebody in there first thing in the morning to go up at 6 o'clock before everybody wakes up and starts going to work and filling their cars up. Obviously it runs into overtime then because the boys are later coming back or later starting. But as regards to the fuel cost, obviously the big vehicles we got, the HGVs, they are doing at the moment 4 to 6 miles per gallon. So it's going to cost the authority, it is going to cost the authority long term, because obviously when the price goes up, we don't get more miles per gallon of these vehicles.
Okay, thanks, Paul. My last question then is, in terms of the authority then, what is our biggest concern in becoming carbon neutral by 2030? Don't all jump in at once to answer it.
I don't know if that question's for me, but I presume it's for the energy officer. I don't know if he is online. I can't see everybody's online.
No, I don't think he is. It's part of the report about carbon neutral by 2030. So I just wanted to find out if there was anything, any of our biggest concerns and things which we'll come back. I can come back to that and take that forward. That's fine. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Okay. Is there any comments from any members? Right. Okay. The recommendations are set out on page 62, which are recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Councillor Hughes has taken us through. Can I take it straight to the vote, and can I have a vote in favour of the report, please? That's great. Myra, I think that's carried.
Yes, that's carried, Chair.
That's great. Thanks for that. Now, before I ask the officers to leave, because that sums up the reports, I just want to take you back quickly to item 5. Myra and Andrew, I'm conscious of the fact that I didn't take a vote on the recommendations. Is that an issue, or can I take a vote on it now, or does it need to be a vote because we talked about it thoroughly? Andrew?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question, Chair. I mean, it is clear to see, I think, that we have taken that that discussion seriously, and the questions have been robust. It's up to you, Chair. I mean, for completeness, you can ask for a vote now, just to close that off, as you've done with the other reports. However, if the committee feels that we have completed that, we can move on.
Okay.
Although I'll bow to Lisa's answer as well.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Lisa?
Chair, apologies, the house phone has just gone off, so the dog may bark. Yes, the dog is going to bark, apologies. When you say item 5, were you referring back to the scrutiny report? Apologies, because I can't get mod.gov back up.
Yes, yes. The scrutiny report, yeah.
Okay, Chair, before we vote on that, is it okay if I just have an observational question to you and perhaps Andrew Mogford? Sorry, it's something that I had penciled in, but I forgot to ask. Is it appropriate? If not, I can ask you when officers leave, perhaps for you as Chair.
Yeah, you can ask her when the officers leave. Andrew's going to stay behind. That'd be great.
Yeah, great. I'll do it then. Okay, no problem. Thank you. Happy to support the recommendations.
Okay, so in terms of agenda item 5, can I have a quick show of hands if we're happy to support the recommendations which were set out on page 5 of the report? Louise? That's great.
Carried,
so that closes it off, which is great. Thanks very much, and my apologies on that. Thanks for doing that. If we can lower our hands. We move on then to agenda item 7, which are the report recommendations. Can I thank the officers for their attendance this afternoon and going on to this evening now, because it's after 5 o'clock. I hope the questions weren't too taxing for you, but I hope we'll be a critical friend going forward for the next year. So thanks very much for attending today, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
We'll just wait for Lisa now, I think, Lisa Curtis-Jones, to leave. Lisa? Perhaps Lisa doesn't want to leave. So we'll carry on then. Lisa, go on, I'll bring you in now then before we go into agenda item 7.
Okay, Chair, thank you. And apologies, I meant to ask it earlier, but I guess now is probably the more appropriate moment. Apologies, firstly, for not making your pre-meet. But as you know, I think other colleagues have had them, and I've had my own as well with my skip committee. Can I just ask, because I'm a little bit puzzled by some comments that were made by a colleague, can I just ask, in regards to chairing the meeting, obviously what we're endeavouring to do as chairs is, you know, not stifle scrutiny, but certainly make it more challenging, and as this scrutiny has just showed, really, you know, getting into the swing of that as well. But when we ask for sort of some preempted questions with the support of our democratic officers, etc., you know, colleagues within the meeting, and especially our co-opted colleagues as well, we may have additional questions, but we're not going to dictate that they can or can't answer those, are we, as part of our pre-meet? No? Okay, good.
Certainly not. And that's something
absolutely.
which I certainly wouldn't want to stifle, because I don't think that's the environment we need to be going down.
Absolutely not. And I'll just clarify that with one of my colleagues then that was on another scrutiny, because I think they thought that was what was happening, but I think it's a misunderstanding. So I'll do that. And I just wanted to check because I couldn't make your meeting. So that's great. Thank you for that, Chair.
Well, that's fine. No problem at all.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Just to come in on that one quickly, if I can, Chair.
Of course.
I think we should be encouraging everybody to partake in the meetings. Whether it's appropriate for others. What I've tried to do this time is to, at least in the beginning of questions, to set up a list and give everybody an opportunity to ask 2 questions. So it goes round. So there should be enough questions to go round, and giving people the opportunity to ask a question if they want to, or just say no question.
Absolutely. And Chair, if I may come back, I agree with Di. You know, he'll know for a number of years, sometimes with all due respect, it can be a little bit embarrassing and trying to get blood out of stone sometimes. I think the pre-meets are something that we definitely need to continue going forward. And, you know, some scrutiny, sadly, we've had that, haven't we? We've had some very active vocal members who've had great challenging questions, and then we've had some that really haven't participated. So I think to encourage everybody and do that is a positive, Di. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, David. Yeah, Lisa, obviously I appreciate that not everybody can attend pre-meetings and everything, which is fine. It's just life, isn't it, as well, going forward. But the pre-meeting we had was very good, actually. There were lots of things which come out of them, which were brought forward. Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item 7, which are the report recommendations. Do we all feel the recommendations in each report? Did we address them, and did we have value in things without questioning? I firmly believe we did. I'm just conscious of what members' thoughts are. I think we touched on it a little bit, but I'll open it up, Lisa.
Chair, I think you made the point earlier. It's very difficult when we're looking at 2 reports which really are, you know, looking back, if you like. You know, there's an element of looking forward when they say where we should be, etc. But I think as well, when we're looking at thematic reports, is always a difficult one. So I think today, as you said, your chairing and the contribution the colleagues have made is really good. So happy to support it. I think when we get those more real robust detailed reports, you know, we'll be able to challenge and dig a little bit deeper. So again, happy to support you, Chair, in your comments.
Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else would like to comment? Are we all happy?
Happy, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 8, which are feedback on scrutiny activities, any outstanding actions, feedback from workshops, task and finish groups, etc. We haven't got any at the moment, because as you can appreciate, as Lisa just said, we just closing the loop from last year and things as well. So, but this is something which we want to build in as part of the agenda going forward. So that's just agenda item 8. We'll move on to agenda item 9, which are any other business deemed urgent by the chair. I haven't, but I just wanted to make everybody aware what we talked on, Lisa, and for yourself as well, the things which we want to look at for the forward work plan, and how we're going to structure it, and what we're going to have, what it's going to incorporate, etc. There were quite a few things which will be discussed. Andrew's gone away then to contact various service heads and things to see if there's anything they want included, they want to be looked at and things as well. So we're waiting for that to come back fully. We've got a meeting lined up the first week of July where they will all come back together. And what I would probably suggest then is I was going to look at it with myself and the chair and vice chair, sorry, and look to go forward. But what I think might be better would be a case if we perhaps have a task and finish group after we've had this meeting in the first week of July to look at some options to get a broader spectrum of what we wanted to look at. Would anybody like to volunteer for that firstly? And I appreciate his time, and again everybody's comments as well, please. Lisa?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, just something to note. I know that it's shall I say, a bit of a bugbear with myself and Councillor Lee Davis, and I'm sure it will be with all of you guys, because we have our RSLs within all of our wards and certainly within the local authority. But I think for that particular scrutiny, but also for this joint scrutiny then as well, it's really to look at, Lee touched upon it earlier really, but it's understanding our relationship with the RSLs, because inevitably we get tenants. So I'll give you an example. We get tenants. I've had 3 tenants I've had to deal with today, Merthyr Valley Homes tenants, right? I've got a pretty good relationship with them, but it gets frustrating, doesn't it? And especially when we're talking about waste and refuge and things like that as well. You know, I love the idea of getting the skips out, don't get me wrong, but that doesn't always impact a lot of the residents that we see. It's those that are reluctant to show just how much they've got going on in their gardens, etc. And then that's causing issues with other tenants, with rats and everything else, as you can imagine. And I'm just feeling a little bit frustrated that there's not enough connection between the LA and those RSLs, as far as making the RSLs accountable as well. You know, I think what we're doing is we're fighting fire with fire. You know, there's I'm sure you've all had to call in environmental health at some point, and you know, we're getting our officers out, but then the issue is still there and it's going on, and it's just causing massive problems. So I think future work plan wise, that would be something that I definitely like to pick up on. And then I'll give some thought to some others in the meantime. It just started a new role, so I do apologise for not making a meeting, but I'll give some thought to some others and share it with you, Chair. But that would be certainly one for me. I think we need to see that collaboration, that partnership work, because otherwise it looks bad on us as local councillors, doesn't it? Because people don't see Merthyr Valley Homes or anybody else. They think it's Merthyr Council all the time, you know. So just wanted to really pick up on that one. Thank you. Sorry for keeping you guys, but I just thought it was important.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Lisa. Andrew, just before I bring David and Lee in on this, how far are we off getting things from other heads of services?
Okay, I'll follow that up, Chair. Hopefully pretty soon. We gave them till close of play Friday, but I know a lot have been off with leave and various other things this time of year. But I'll follow that up and make sure we've got that ready for that workshop.
Lovely. Okay. In terms of the workshop then, in the first week of July, would it be a good idea for not just myself and the Vice Chair, Kevin, to be there, but a couple of the other members, perhaps say another 2 members, to be there to go through everybody's options as well? Like Lisa is quite passionate about what she spoke about. If they send details over to me, would another 2 members be interested in attending this workshop in the first week of July? We haven't got an exact date yet, Andrew, have we?
No, Safe is back off leave tomorrow. I know he's been organising that, so we'll have an update from Safe tomorrow.
Brilliant. Okay, so in terms of that, Lisa, Lee, Louise, David, would any of you like to attend that to go through the options so we can perhaps properly structure a forward work plan of what we want to include as well?
Yeah, happy to, as long as we get the date, Chair. You know, I'm only working part-time in my new role, so you know, hopefully I can swap things around then. So yeah, happy if you know, we can make it, definitely.
Okay, no, great. Well, I tell you what then, because it's only a small number. We're only a small number, aren't we? So, you know, we just as well open the invite out to all 4 of you, and we can all get involved in it. It's like a mini task and finish group, I suppose. But I suppose, you know, it is what it is, and it'll be small. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, so Andrew, when you get the date, if you can obviously let me know, or you can let everybody know in the one hit, and that would be great if we can go from there. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just like to support Lisa with her concerns about waste being, well, and Lee's waste being held within properties within RSLs, and something I'd obviously availability, bearing availability in mind, I'll happily be involved in that. One other point, Chair, I believe Councillor Lee Davis was supposed to give a comment on item 7, was it?
You're right. Item 6. You please gonna have to forgive me. Yes, you was, but I think we covered a lot of it anyway, Lee, did we?
Well, my comment is going to go straight into that really. Anyway, I can fill you in on both things then. So, if Di, you finished?
Brilliant. Thanks, David. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, it's just on what Lisa and David said. I've got a really good relationship with Merthyr Valley Homes, but I probably speak to Merthyr Valley Homes far more than I speak to the local authority. I probably speak to them 5-6 times a day, with different issues with tenants. It's like, you know, they own pretty much the majority of Gourness. I did walk the community with 2 directors last week, looking at different areas and showing them issues, because it's all well and good sending emails, but being on site, you can actually see things. And I think residents sometimes not so much walk around with their eyes shut, but things have been this for so long, they don't know what to expect. You know, weeds coming out, and you know, and a lot of this is council issues as well. And I've walked it with council staff as well in the last 2 months as well, to say, look, it's not good enough, and they have responded to it. But yeah, so basically, through my work with the Community Renewal Fund, the Creative Industries Programme funding, developed a relationship with Open University. They put in an application as well for funding. Cross-pollination is called for co-production. It's working with Glasshouse in London and City Urbanists in Glasgow as well. So that we've been having workshops with officers over the last few months about co-producing something. We were going to do it around housing. Merthyr Valley Homes were involved in the discussion, social services, loads of different departments. So then we decided to have a day, which was 2 weeks ago. This wasn't my idea. They picked Gourness as an area because obviously Merthyr Valley Homes are one of the key partners in this project. So we came up, lots of officers, partners came up, and then we decided we're planning a community day of where we can speak to the community and issues within and what they see as the way forward within the community. Obviously, there's going to be new school developments within the area, and it's a really good point to be speaking to them. So it's working with the community about how they envisage their community going forward.
Great.
That's it.
No, that's great.
I'm happy for you guys to be involved when we have another session. If you want to come up and involved in a day, it might be 2 days now. So yeah, all for that, I can share that.
Great, thanks, Lee. Yeah, if you can please let us know, that would be great. Great, thank you very much. I'm conscious of the fact then we talked then as members of the authority, but Claire, would you like to be involved in these discussions about the forward work programme as well in beginning of July?
If I could be sent some information, it'll all depend on what I've already got in my work diary. But thank you for the invite.
No, that's great. I think it's important in terms of inclusivity as well, and views from outside as well. So that's great. Okay, that's great. That's us covered for today. Thank you all very much for your attendance. Has anybody got any comments they'd like to add before we leave?
Good meeting, well chaired. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lee. Thanks all. Have a lovely evening. Good night.
Sorry to make